Hi and welcome to CIOs with Coffee. I'm Peter Jameson, your host, and today I'm joined by not just a business leader, but a doctor of culture. Patrick Duffy, or Dr. Patrick Duffy to give him his full title, is leading the charge for cultural diagnostics, looking at how organizations can use culture to empower both themselves and their employees to achieve more. Patrick, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Brilliant.
You have an incredible history and a story to tell. And it's certainly, our objective today to really understand how you got to where you are today. And then really, if you don't mind, pick your brains a little bit on how you can take some actionable insights away from all your experience. So you have been CEO. You have then gone for a doctorate. You now work around the sciences of cultural diagnostics. You've written your own cultural diagnostics framework. And that was all in an afternoon.
Yeah, it was probably a few afternoons. Yeah. But so where did it all start? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. It started in the hills outside Dublin in the 80s.
Yeah.
So you won't remember that.
Absolutely not. Of course.
Yeah, so just a young guy, wasn't it? Good at football, bad at school, and left school, needed a job, didn't go to uni at the time for various reasons, so went into working in lots of things like lots of young guys. And then eventually I wiggled into a management training program in a big retail company, and things went from there. So suddenly I was a manager. Or learning how to become one. So that was good for me. It gave me a kick because, there's things like consequences and responsibilities. So I needed that. And then for the next 28 years, basically, I'm learning how to, mostly in the services world, so retailing, leisure, visitor attractions, some regulated stuff, NGO, government and private sector. So probably finding myself being called a director after a few years and then taking it there. Had good days, bad days, delivered some results most of the time, not all of the time. So that's 28 years. But really the big question that I think you're getting at is, so how did that translate to now?
Yeah.
So the thing about management, general management and leadership and things like that is, a lot of people running businesses or organizations, they're interested in the product. So if you're running something, sports brand or restaurant business or a government agency, you're probably interested in what it does, or are you? So I found over the long term that sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. I'm interested in the product. But ultimately I realized after a long time, 28 years or so, that what am I really interested in? And what's the job you're actually doing? So what you're interested in is how the organization works. How it does what it wants to do.
Yeah.
And that's called capability.
So if we talk a bit about your previous CEO roles, and you take all of the learnings that you've now gathered over the time of looking at cultural diagnostics, can you see where you would have changed things now, having had that hindsight of the understanding and learning you got of culture? Did you understand at the time how important culture was as a CEO?
Intuitively, not like intellectually. So. But when you say culture is the sort of the vibe, the sort of the unseen. But that's the sort of an outcome that everyone thinks they know what it is, and we all know what it is, but we can't really explain it. So I would have liked to know more about what is meant by culture, to be honest with you, and how to influence it positively. I would have liked to know more about it early on, but that's part of the learning, isn't it? But intuitively, yeah. So if I went back and did stuff, like we all would, you'd be a lot smarter in some situations.
Yeah.
So what's culture? So culture is the unseen bit. It's all the values and the assumptions and the belief systems that's going on underneath that you can't see. What most people think they call culture is the behaviors. But what's driving that? So when you say, we want to change the culture of the organization, well, that's been triggered because you're looking at situations or behaviors, but you're not actually seeing the culture. The culture is the reason why the behaviors are there, and it's the whole composition of the feelings and the belief systems and the assumptions, and they're all built up over time. So culture is actually, there's no such thing as a bad culture, because culture by definition got there for a reason, for survival. It's a social thing. So when you say this organization has a bad culture, what it means is, well, that's because everyone's value system is doing what it needs to do to survive in the way that it thinks it needs to. So if you want to change it, you're going to have to go after the values, not the behaviors.
So that's for me is a bit of an eye-opener, right? Because I think like everyone, I've always said, okay, yep, this place has a good culture, this place has a bad culture, because I naturally assumed that was the linkage. And I think a lot of people would think that as well. So if we can then open that up a little bit and say, okay, well, can you change a culture with the behaviors? And if I get the second question onto that, we've all seen various different high-ranking consultants walk into an organization and say, we're going to set your organizational values, we're going to tell you that we need to be this and that, and we need to chase for excellence, we need to chase for the dreams, or whatever it may be. How much of that is rubbish?
Yeah, I'm a bit, I'm learning still myself, so I'm not going to throw out major authorities or anything like that, but I'm quite cynical about it, to be honest. I'm quite cynical about how it's termed, particularly in the consulting world. So if I throw something in provocative and then work back, I don't think you can have a bad culture by definition. There's something else, because the culture is what it thinks it needs to be in this situation. So when you say a toxic culture, yeah, but why are they toxic? What's their values that they're holding on to then behave this way in this situation? Also, I don't think you can change a culture because you say that's top down. It's not bottom up. So if you say all the behaviors are toxic and there's politics and there's conflict and there's bad energy and uncool vibes going on, they're symptoms of a culture. They're proxies for a culture, but they're not the actual culture. So culture by definition is backward looking. It takes a long time. If you really want to change a culture in an organization, you have to change what it's in, people. So, that's the radical route.
Okay.
Which is, if you say, we're going to change transformational culture change over 6 months, there's no such thing. You can't change a belief system or value system in people in 6 months. So that's why, what's the meme that 70% of cultural transformation change programs fail? What do you mean by fail? But let's assume that it's big and it causes a lot of trauma. As soon as you say the word culture out loud, it's not culture anymore, because culture is created. There's a famous guy, what's his name? Joseph, I think, was the academic. Culture is made uncritically and unconsciously. So it's built up over time unconsciously. It's like if you imagine a tribe, it's just basically, it's what's worked. We're still here. Like the last
learned
behaviors, interactions, value systems, belief systems, unsaid stuff. So as soon as you say we're going to change the culture, then it's not unconscious anymore, and it's not uncritical. You know what I mean? So everyone's A, criticizing it or critically thinking about it, and B, they're aware of it.
So are we changing behaviors rather than culture?
So
and behaviors then, or the culture then, is an outcome of the behavior change?
Over a long time, but you could never make a claim. So I'm happy to debate that, and I'm sure it is debated. But you can never make a claim. Let's say if I was a director of something, and then say, "Oh yeah, I changed the culture of the organization there in a year." No, you didn't. You modified the context. You modified the behavior system. You went top down. You gave yourself a license to intervene, and it's legitimate and it's ethical. But you didn't change the culture. What you did was you modified the environment. You have the authority and empowerment to do that. And it's also quite demeaning to people. It says that people, you can change them like light bulbs, and they're just the sockets. So culture is very important. It's critical. It's the fundamental thing in organizations, absolutely. But the way it's spoken about sometimes, particularly from the people world or the organization development world, is get real, really. If you want to change culture overnight or in a year, then either get new people or accept that you're not going to do it, but you can do something else. But as soon as you say it out loud, we're going to change the culture of you, the problem, that's quite demeaning. And straight away, people are conscious of that. And what are they going to do first? Resist. It's a natural process, because you're introducing something onto the table which says or implies that you're a problem. And of course, we all react the same way to that, won't we? Which is, okay, well, yeah, and whatever. So an example in technology, for example, is, you introduce a new technology, and then people still won't let go of old processes.
Yeah, biggest problem in any ERP kind of deployment is that problem.
So you come in as cool CIO, and it's also it's a bad culture here. Well, no. If you go, that's the behaviors. But actually, the values are very positive. And what's the value? Accuracy. So they're actually holding on to their values, which is accuracy, ethics, integrity. They don't want to let something slip. So at the surface level, it appears as if they're resisting new technology. No, they're not. They're just holding on to their old values. So in order to what's called frame break that, you have to allow for what's called psychological safety. Allow them to do it without the risk. So it's managing the risk process so that, because otherwise a risk, it's called disconfirmation. Let go of that value, keep the value, but know that it works here as well, sort of thing. So that's the real culture. What you're talking about, or what we see, is the behavior. And then we say to them it's a bad culture. It's not a bad culture. Everyone has a value system, which is usually positive. It's the adaptation and the change process.
So you've just used some really interesting words there, which I think on the surface of it would be very valuable. You said things like integrity, people trying to keep hold of something that they believe is to be true. I've deployed multiple ERP situations, and normally, rightly or wrongly, those people are labeled as change resistors. They're resistant to progress. They are badged as negative people. The way you've termed it there is that they're not negative. They have a belief system that is actually fundamentally based on a level of
risk
management.
So they're looking at risk. So let's assume. So there's the odd bad egg. Okay, fine. But let's assume in the main that most people, especially in IT world, technology world, delivery, accuracy, the whole concept of enterprise architecture, accommodating all the processes and all the end trails and the connection points. That's anyone who works there will have probably a very powerful, positive value system and belief system about what that is supposed to do and deliver. So if they end up going through a change processes and they're resisting, then really subconsciously they're afraid of messing up. So their default position was, well, it's just, even subconscious, not conscious, I'll just stick with what I know works and gets everything from A to B. So that's the threshold frame breaking moment that is usually the issue, usually.
So let me ask you the question I think then every technical leader watching this is likely to want to know. Okay, that's the behavior, how do I change it? Because if I've been tasked with deploying a new ERP that has a whole bunch of new processes, and you're saying, hey, these guys are not bad guys, they're just being conditioned behavioral wise to say, hey, I this is the way I want to say it. How do I, as a tech leader, or any kind of leader within the business that's driving that kind of change, whether it be ERP or anything else, can you change those behaviors? Are those behaviors trainable, or are you effectively having to look for new staff?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a whole raft of stuff there, context-based as well. But if we take, for example, number one is how you frame it. So one of the problems with the big words like transformation and change and those sort of things is the word in itself implies big step, big risk. I'm a big believer in sort of solid stealth, incremental, trial and test, hedge bets, spread. So as soon as you find yourself, that's why the culture change side, even it's analogous to technology. As soon as you go into a grand announcement, effectively what you're saying is you failed. And now there's risk, and you're the problem. So think about the psychology of that. I failed, CEO, whatever, or we failed. But I'm blaming you, the culture.
Yeah.
And now
it all seems very familiar, doesn't it?
And now there's a high risk situation and a burning platform, and I have the authority, and it's legitimate and it's ethical because all of the classic theories says this is the steps that we have to follow. So as soon as you get into that situation, you just apply that to the technology scene and think about everyone's state of mind going into that situation. So it's my opinion, just based on experience and just reading up on it a bit more maybe and doing some research, is that's a failure point. So you might just have to accept it and bite the bullet, and then it's top down and it's force. Okay, that's legitimate. That's what I call the pop approach.
Yeah.
Just pop, radical. You're out. You're in. This changes. That changes. I mean,
but what's your consequences of that then to the wider behavioural traits that you see in the department? If we take a ERP, I'm going to be generalistic here, but let's just say ERP affects the finance department. You have, let's just say, 50 people in the finance department. You identify maybe 15, maybe on the top side 20 people who have the behaviours of holding on to the legacy way of working for all of the reasons you've said. There's a practicality that says I can't switch out 20 people. Yeah. There's a authoritarianism element that, yes, I could apply that authoritarianism and just say, yes, we're going to do it, and this is the way you're going to learn.
It's context-based, yeah.
It's context-based. But do you then think that has a push-down behaviour onto either behaviours or indeed the culture at a later point, if that's the behaviours demonstrated by technical leaders or business leaders?
I mean, the danger here is generalizing, but let's generalize, okay? So in the long term, no, because the culture itself is not based on a short-term crisis. It'll go into memory. So if it's sustained, then it will affect culture. If it's sustained over a long period of time, but major interventions. What I find quite sort of funny about it is just tell the truth. Here's the situation, folks. And it's going to involve change. Don't mention the word culture. It's just a big diversion, because then you're into things. Oh, let's have a value system. Yeah. Let's have a forum. Let's do an engagement. All this sort of stuff. Just don't mention that. Just get on with the stuff. Yeah. And that's whatever. But in terms of the question we're saying, if there are behavioural resistances going on. Most of that, I'd say 9 times out of 10, is based on a value system which is positive, which has a fear of consequences, of letting go. So you either take the top-down approach and just change it, people and process. If you're confident that that's not creating a new risk, if you know what to do and you know how to clean it up, then top-down. That's particularly in business and industry, that's a right. You have a right to make changes. But over the longer term, what it suggests is you give people a way out psychologically. Because if they're resisting something, and this would bring in the culture equation, if they're resisting something, then you have to give them a way out where they can feel safe about adaptation. And so you minimize the risk. So don't take big steps with a small number of people, and then that's a risk management, a risk assessment bit. So spread it a little bit. It depends on the context. But if it involves a big capex expenditure, big kit, short time span, then you just have to know what you're doing. And it's like a scene of an accident. If you know what you're doing, then just do it. Yeah. Okay. That's not culture question. That's something else.
So if I change gears for a second, your long traditional legacy companies may have a bit of risk aversion to failure. Failure is a bad word. Failure is not encouraged. And then we look at other firms, and we can probably look at Silicon Valley, and we'll find definitely a couple of these fail fast, scale soon type ideas. And some of them, even some of the more recent AI companies, have that philosophy of, hey, we don't mind failure. Failure is actually encouraged, because if you're not failing, it means you're not actually succeeding. But that's quite a, in my mind, that's quite a modern mindset. That's maybe come into the last decade as being that
No, it's
healthy.
It's been around a while. I mean, back in the day, it depends on the type of context or organization, but certainly in the military and intelligence services and technology and or manufacturing or anything like that, you'd have what's called an NP, new product development area, or what's called basement stuff, where you accept 5% of your money is just sunk all the time, and something out of that skunk works will come out eventually. The invention side. So, but if you're hedging all your bets on a product and investment, and there's no flexibility over time for failure, risk, and experiment, then at some point you might have a bit of because you're not feeding your agenda of change and adaptation and new product development and all that sort of stuff.
So how important is it then as a leader, whether it be CIO, C-suite, whatever it may be, to encourage a level of failure? Is that an important behavioral trait to show?
I think so. Well, I mean, within reason, but it's proportionality. So as you have to encounter failure. It's like, I used to study, botany and trees and things like that. Where does resilience come from? You can't be resilient unless you have exposure. Okay, if you've never been exposed to anything, then you're never going to be resilient and you're never going to learn. So failure within proportional failure, if you put it that way, not catastrophic failure all the time, but proportional.
That's generally bad for business, right?
Yeah. I mean, the concept is picked up in athletics and weights and all that sort of stuff. So it's about failure. Your body has to experience a tipping point in order for your body to then say, okay, I know how to deal with that the next time. So that's what muscle building is. I'm not promoting this necessarily, but
you're not sponsored by a protein shake or anything like that.
No.
Celsius or.
Not yet.
No, we're not. But we are open for sponsorship, just in case you're interested. We're totally open for coffee as well.
So it's the same. If you think about why do you go to the gym? Why are you supposed to go to the gym? Or why would you go for a 10K walk? Because you're putting your body was designed to move, which means it was designed to reach points where it says, this is the limit. I have hypoxia, no air left. So it says then after, this is why recovery is important as well, by the way. It's not just about failure. It says then, right, next time, I'm going to get this.
Yeah.
So the muscles then regrow. So they collapse and regrow. So you need to build in some sort of psychological space or workspace, work design, just as a generality within organizations, which says, okay, look, try that out. But it's hedged against, governed risks, normal stuff. So you need to give that space to people. If you don't have that over time, if something is over governed with no capacity for actual failure, then you can't say you're a learning organization.
Yeah,
it's impossible. You're a conforming organization.
So, who's responsible for the curation of behaviors in an organization?
Well, that's a huge question. My philosophy, again, it's all black and white, so it's more nuanced, I suppose. It depends on what you consider an organization to be. If you consider it to be a mature environment, then people are responsible. But they need to know they are.
Because
and
a lot of
feel like that. If this is where the HR world sometimes trips itself up, by assuming that it has to engineer how people behave and their value system. What that says is they're the parent and everyone else is the child.
Mm-hmm.
So autonomy, liberty, so to speak, liberty in the workplace, boundaries as well. So it's not just liberty ad infinitum, so it depends on the maturity of the environment. Is it capable of being a coherent, vibrant, place or not? If it's not, then no, you would have to be top down. You would have to be engineering. You would have to be a bit, how would you say, directive for a while.
So for me, in all the organizations I've pretty much worked for, and it stems all the way from IBM, Microsoft, they've talked around this concept of a high performance culture. We're a high performance organization. We're this, we're that. And as our conversations kind of gone, this behaviors and the way that the behaviors work are very much pushing that culture. So the term "we're a high performance organization" is that again a little bit of marketing speak?
Slogan, yeah.
Yeah.
So you hear them. We all understand them, right? So what do you hear? You hear like high commitment, high involvement, high performance work systems, all that sort of stuff. What are you actually saying? For who? For the staff? They want to be that, do they? Or is it there's an outcome, isn't there?
It's for the shareholders. It's for
right.
Yeah.
So just be honest about it. So
I don't think that sells very well though.
Well, actually, you'd be surprised. Candor, in my view, sells better than instrumentalism.
Would we need to put though something along the lines of high performance equals better results when it comes to pay cycles, or if we're a high performance organization, then we are going to be more susceptible to a better career prospects or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
is that how you would want to frame it?
Again, so it's like as soon as you go in and put on the table, we're now going to enter a high performance work systems scenario, you're sort of saying in code it's going to get tough around here.
Yeah.
So why would you do that?
So is that immediately going to build up this kind of fear, that kind of anxiety that people might get? So hang on a minute, I'm now in attack mode and I need to defend.
That's one thing, but it also builds up indifference.
Yeah.
So the more of this language you hear all the time, the more tolerant you become of it. It's like smoking or eating sweets or whatever. The more you have, the more tolerant, which means you need,
higher amount of sugar or whatever it may be.
Yeah. So as soon as you start throwing this lingo around the place too much, I mean, some is okay. If it's well directed and there's a specific agenda, but people normally, we all sort of think, what does that mean? What do you mean high commitment? Does that mean something wrong with us? Or high performance? So we're at low performance right now. Then this sort of thing, it's quite degrading.
Yeah.
In some ways, I mean, behind it all, there's what's called in old language the psychological contract. So
I've heard of this, the psychological contract. What?
Yeah. Well,
explain that a little bit more for us.
Well, it sort of means that, like back in the old days, you could be told exactly what to do all of the time in your contract.
Yeah.
This is my work contract, and I do this, and that's it. And
I think there are still some firms that do that, to be fair.
There's a bit of that, but you can't do that. You can't specify legally everything that needs to be done or could be done in an employment contract or a job description.
Yeah.
So the concept of the psychological contract says, well, this is a sort of a quid pro quo arrangement around that to give us employer and employee a bit of wriggle room to sort of have understandings about what we expect from each other.
Yeah.
So the psychological, which is actually fundamental, it's like in the government, it's all about legitimacy. It's not about the mandate. It's about legitimacy. If the understanding is going on well, then that's actually a bit more powerful than the actual election or the actual appointment of the whoever. So the psychological contract, is critical. So that changes over time. So, so people your age and younger expect more
I'm liking to we see
from
people
their
my age and
employers
younger.
these days.
It gives an impression I'm quite young, which I'll keep that.
But you know, Gen Z in particular, or millennials, whatever, you know, there's higher expectations about what we can achieve personally from the workplace, what we're entitled to, what we expect to see, that sort of thing. So that's part of the psychological contract. So that's sort of a force on the employer or the company to conform to cultural expectations about what people expect. And, you know, things like more autonomy, more flexibility, working from home, these sort of things. So the psychological contract is sort of the soft bit around the hard contract, but it's actually really important and overlooked quite a lot actually. And in there is culture quite a lot. That's where it lives most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and get my phraseology right here. Is it toxic culture or toxic behaviors?
Yeah.
If I'm in a workplace and I feel
more so, yeah. Because that's what you're seeing. So
I'm seeing toxic behaviors, which is resulting in toxic culture, or is
no. The toxic behaviors or the toxicity, if you put it that way, is because toxicity refers to feelings and maybe behaviors as well. So the toxicity is a pathology which is being driven by something else. So the culture might be driving it, but also things like leadership might be driving it, or stress, or the environment, or what's going on might be driving. So toxicity is the symptom. So what's the cause?
Okay,
you know, bad structure, bad processes, bad technology, defensiveness, etc. You know, so toxicity is the what you see, the top of the iceberg, and then people sort of describe that as the culture, but it's not really, I don't think.
So look, I think we certainly I know of and have experienced myself what I would deem to be toxic management.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's related back to micromanagement, you know, and I'm a complete non-micromanager fan. I don't like it. I don't prescribe to it. I think it doesn't work. I appreciate there are some situations that micromanagement is the prescribed requirement or is the prescribed need. I'm not that kind of individual. And how would I suppose if you were in a role, in a job, is that something how could you deal with something like that? If you feel you've got toxic management, you think there's a toxic culture that's driving a way that you can't work, like micromanagement being one, but you know, I've known of narcissistic tendencies of managers, for example, gaslighting, you know, these kind of really quite nasty psychological games which people play. How do you handle some of that if you're reporting into that?
Leave.
Yep.
Is a good option. I mean, there's some things you can't control in life. So, I mean, that's the old sort of stoicism philosophy. Look, if there's some things you just can't control, then you have to maneuver yourself to avoid that thing in your life, whatever it is. And I know people have to work, but ultimately that's the right answer, that one there. But I mean, in terms of, so you're talking about looking at leadership, and it's
I'm more being even more open to say, hey, look, you know, I'm an employee. I see behaviors which I don't like in management, or I might see behaviors that I don't have any ability to correct. And obviously, if it's a subordinate, I can maybe have a conversation with someone and say, hey, your behaviors are not really demonstrating the right, you know, pattern. You know, I don't like the way that you're handling certain situations. You need to be mindful about what you're saying. But if you're trying to do it up the way, you know, it's a very brave person who comes and has a chat with their, you know, executive board member to say, hey, I don't think you're a particularly nice person. I think your narcissistic tendencies are a bit of an off-put.
It's really hard to do that. I know. We're always that's actually a really hard thing to do. Having said that, boundaries are important. I've had to learn a lot about this myself. Boundaries are important. So, you know, if you've got weak boundaries, soft boundaries, you know, I had this issue myself probably a long time ago, still, I suppose, which is that becomes cumulative. So,
And when you say weak boundaries, you're meaning what you're willing to tolerate?
Over-pleasing, going the extra mile, being exploited at its worst case, taken advantage of, or if somebody knows your boundaries, people will know each other's boundaries intuitively just from knowing each other. So having boundaries is important early on. Everyone's heard about that. So this sort of is not in the scope of my area, so maybe I'll give that one a pass. That's a boundary.
Any tips for how to create boundary?
No, the only way you can't write a manifesto and send it on a memo. So you have to.
Well, that's where I've gone wrong all my life. Right?
Yeah,
Okay, that's okay.
Like, don't email me now. Don't do this. No, you have to wait till you encounter the situation with the person. I mean, that's what relationship building is, right? But as soon as you start getting into transactions and relationships and stuff like that, it's just understand the boundaries.
Yeah.
So I was very, very bad at that, to be honest with you. I would take on too much, or be, and I would pay the price for it.
Why do people take on too much? What is that? Just the way we're built? Is that just psychological?
Everyone's different. Everyone's on a spectrum of something, aren't they? So my values will be merit, creating value, contribution, and stuff like that. It's all very nice, but it's actually not a good thing sometimes. You got to draw your own boundary and say, I've got to look after myself here and not look for validation from going an extra mile all the time, because that becomes a signal that you will always be going an extra mile.
So that becomes the norm.
And then
so you think you're going the extra mile, but everyone else sees that as the norm. So when you stop doing that, that looks like actually you're negatively pulling back.
Correct. But you're talking about the toxic leader who will take advantage of that. They won't take advantage of that if they don't know that boundary. If they know the boundary. So if it's just straightforward power, but this is more rare, I think, than the norm. If it's straightforward power and just a real, muppet, just leave, and that's you're not going to beat that. But in the main, generally speaking, for most of us, is just understanding boundaries, and so it's not so much what we might call the bad guys all the time. Think of the so-called victims. The victims sometimes need to think about how they become a victim.
Yeah,
So it's a lot to do with boundaries. That's my opinion. So I've learned a few lessons on that one.
So I want to pick up on a couple of final points with you before we close up. For me as a technical leader, self-confessed, I know when I'm interviewing people, what for me makes a good individual, and for technical people, it's a bit easier. I can check technical skills, and I get a general feeling of whether they're a good person, if they've got good technical skills, if they seem passionate about what they talk about, and all those kind of things. I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've ever been in a room such as with someone like yourself, for example, who is helping me maybe build what that good team dynamic is. Those cultural traits, with Myers-Briggs kind of, assessments that we see, all of these kind of now, and sometimes quite expensive assessments that people are doing on candidates. But to me as I suppose, a technical leader, my world is mainly in the technical space. I would never claim to be a cultural psychologist in any form of the matter. Do you think this is something that organizations do enough of to make sure that they're building positive behavioral teams that will actually push things forward?
I think they're over trying, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because again, the assumption is, and again, we're just generalizing, right? So I'm sure it's all different. But as soon as you say behaviors, are they doing enough for behaviors? Well, go back to the question: why are the behaviors there in the first place? So if you look at the duality, so somebody's behaving in this environment, okay, so look at the environment, and then the behavior follows. Instead of looking at the behavior and focusing on that. So if you take the technology world, for example, so what sort of attributes would you expect to see? Let's come up with an archetypal technology, great person.
So I'm curious. I'm looking for someone who's got out of the box thinking. There's a classic.
Okay, so let's think about some traits then. Okay, so what would you expect to see, and you want to encourage this? So it'd be curiosity, investigative, energy, problem solving.
And they're measurable. We can measure those, or is that subjective?
There's some psychometrics for various things like tolerance for ambiguity, complexity, all of these sort of things. But let's say you're looking for an archetypal perfect person in technology, rather than try and make behaviors that way. Look, it's like the magician. Take the attention away from the behaviors. Come over here, and sort of said what's called the attention approach. So bring attention to something. I remember this signal. I remember I was working in an organization where there was a lot of fatigue and avoidance and clamping down and all that sort of stuff. But you create big projects. You create like big, exciting projects, and everyone's sort of the behaviors all disappear. Because everyone can empathize with that big purpose. And it gives them and they feel safe. It's exciting. It's new, but we have enough knowledge and experience anyway that just because the project is new, we know how it works. It's just really exciting. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of human resources and organization development work focuses too much on the person and on the assumption that you just change some switches. But you need to change the environment and they do their own changing of the switches. More so. I'm generalizing. You know what I mean? So behavioral modification and interventions and all this sort of stuff, I think as soon as you go down that language route, then people are a problem. But you need to bring attention to the environment, what's going on in the environment, so that people are never a problem. No people in 99%, hopefully maybe 98, I don't know, are not problematic people in life. So what are they giving their attention to? And you use that process to then weed out the behavioral issues. Because if the attention and the environment is, say, healthy, progressive, positive, we've got something big on, the 2% or whatever it is who are just not up to it or not interested, it'll become obvious. Then you can get involved in some behavioral stuff.
Well, look, talking about behavioral stuff, you're constantly innovating, and you're now an author. You're writing a couple of books.
I'm trying.
You're trying. How's that going?
Not too bad. So I've taken a plunge in life. I am like a lot of things. A lot of people in life, they say, I always wanted to do this. Okay. So this is true in my case. I always wanted to. I enjoy writing, which has nothing to do actually a lot with my.
You did a PhD, job, so surely that helps.
Well, funnily enough, yes and no. It helps in terms of if you do a PhD or something like that, what you're actually learning to do is research. You're learning how to be a researcher. That's what you're learning how to do. But the irony is that the writing style academically is horrible. Writing is horrible to read. So if you write like that and then try and write,
no one's buying your book. No one's buying a book. Yeah.
So
your book is not academic. What we're saying here, where it's very different to that.
But the risk is that I get dense and try and be overly accurate, and I have to let go. So I spent years and years trying to train myself to be a researcher and write academically, with great discomfort at times, and now I have to try and undo that type of thing. So and I've got 3 or 4 topics that I'm just me as a bloke is interested in, and I'm writing about. One of them is this thing you're talking about, the organization stuff. So in the next 2 or 3 months, hopefully we'll see something that's available.
Fantastic.
To read.
And we can get you back on and maybe talk about the book a little bit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm actually quite fearful of just so that I need a bravery pill, because I'm not good with social media. I'm a technophobe. I'm a laggard. So when it comes to,
well, you call it the right show. I mean, you're CIO to a coffee.
So I was the first. When we talk about like email, I'm still. Do you remember the old dial-up
Yeah.
noise?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't remember that noise. You know, the dial-up when you're logging into your computer, 1995 or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm just turning on the PC and I'll log in. Of course, you hear in the office is all the dial-up noises, which takes 5 minutes to then log on.
And it's slow.
To dial up. Yeah. So, but it took me years to have a mobile phone. It takes me even more years to change a mobile phone. So I'm a complete laggard. So one of the things I'm sort of afraid of is social media. I don't do social media. I don't want to be out there, that sort of thing. But it's completely bad for this sort of stuff.
Well, I was going to say, look, you've broken that rule now. You've come on a podcast.
Yeah. So I'm afraid of writing something that then people are going to say something about. So it's this like paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want to write, but then I'm thinking, if I make a mess and someone criticizes it, then I need to get over that.
Is that can you do that, or do you just learn to be tolerant?
No, I just got to get on with it. It's like anything, isn't it?
Just do it.
It's like I have
bungee jumping or anything.
Yeah,
else,
I'm very adventurous on the one hand, which is a bit of a paradox, really, but very risk averse sometimes as well, particularly socially. So that's why I was saying back in the day when I found myself as a trainee manager in an organization, it was the best thing that could happen to me because I was forced into a scene where I was visible and had to take responsibility and interact. So maybe I'm sort of going full loop and going back to my insular days. I just prefer to sit at home and write, actually.
Yeah.
And hopefully nobody says anything bad.
Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I want to kind of close out, and I'll let you choose how many you want to give, but it would be great if you can give us 1 to 5 or more if you've got them, but actionable recommendations around your world of cultural diagnostics in how that could help CIOs or tech professionals make more successful decisions around tech deployments, or just supporting the technology environment within inside an organization, because I think it's an incredibly undersold superpower that is not really seen today in any technology projects. And I always self-confess I'm aware of cultural change management. I'm aware of, maybe not cultural change management anymore, now it's more maybe behavior that I'm being trained today. But, organizational change management, communication mechanisms, the bringing people along a story, all of those, I suppose, to some extent, buzzwords that we've spoken about. Yeah. But I think to a lot of people, they are still buzzwords. What does, some of that even mean? So if I can ask you just, however many you feel you can provide, what would be some actionable takeaways that a technical leader or a project manager or anyone who's in that tech space who's delivering a project, whatever size or scale, could use to help them with those people who maybe don't want to change, or how to prepare people for change, get people away from that risk?
Okay, so it could either be one recommendation or it could be 100. So where do we start? Well, the first thing is be careful about the use of the word culture. I would say first and foremost, don't just assume that's it, because A, you can't see it. B, it's virtually impossible to measure, and that's another conversation. But it can be assessed. And C, if you just alert everyone that culture is the problem, immediately what you're saying is that everything else is off the menu. So I'd say from a technology, enterprise architecture, transformation programs, all that's anything that's going to disrupt how stuff normally happens. Just be careful about using the word. Culture is important. It's in the conversation, but think about context, structure, processes. So, the technology people are usually very good at looking at processes, links, technology, implications, all that sort of interfaces and that sort of thing. But then they worry and wonder why, behaviors are not right, learning curves are slow, politics is up, resistance is there, because they're very rational. This is how everything works, but they're not looking at the irrational organization, and the irrational organization is much more powerful than the rational one. So whatever way you come in from a technology perspective or from a soft science perspective, a sociological perspective, take both. So to CIOs and CTOs, I'd say, don't just say, I have all the knowledge and I know what the correct answer is for the process and design, sort this out. Accept that you're going to have to accommodate that within your engagement with people already, even if you think you know it. Because this classic mistake from CTOs is they just assume the technology fixes a problem or has all the answers because it's totally rational. But that also assumes everyone else is going to be rational as well.
I don't know any CIOs or CTOs that would be like that at all.
Yeah, so that's the biggest mistake we make, is we just assume we're rational, even if we had the right answer, which of course we don't all the time anyway.
So if I'm taking a couple of these away, so using culture as a terminology with any of these projects is a cautionary tale, maybe not to do it. Second of all, is that kind of like systems check about, actually, am I being rational? Am I being correct about what we're doing? Any recommendations on how to do that systems check? That kind of, right, am I being rational? Am I demonstrating the right behaviors? Am I showing a change mindset?
It's probably good. I mean, if I was going into a scenario, it's like if you imagine you're a captain of a boat, a ship, you just want to do it like, or a pilot of an airplane, or an astronaut, or not even as glamorous as that. You're just buying a new car. So you're just doing a checklist, right? So the fuel, the weight, the tires, whatever. So before you go into something major, if we're talking about that, understand, do some basic diagnostics, but from different perspectives. So yeah, you could probably run some things which will help you profile the people, but not just in your area, but outside the area, like the clients, the customers. That's knowledge, isn't it? It's data, because then you can cross-reference that data with impacts and other stuff as well. So I'd run some diagnostics if it's not already in the system, or at least understand the data. What does the people metrics say for this organization? What's missing? If you're going to launch in with a big CapEx program and invest a lot of money, and you don't have data which you can attest to as the CIO, which describes your organization's readiness, then that's a bit foolish, right? And then complain later that people are resisting something. So you'll understand this part as a CIO, data. So and this is over the longer term, organizations need to understand themselves. So what analytics have you got? Not just descriptive analytics, but understandings. What does it mean? So you can measure culture to a certain extent. Do you want to benchmark that against another organization, or you're just happy to understand your own value? So yeah. Recommendation 3 or 4, whatever it is as much as you love analytics and data in technology and economics and finance, then love it as much within the environment that you're actually trying to help. Which is the people analytics, or the customer analytics, or the connection. So I would say that as well, and that's a big I would say a big gap, because technology people it's very focused. It's very rational. It's very systems led. It's inputs, machine, outputs, and all the connections. But then you put humans into it, and it gets messed up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Dr. Patrick Duffy, it has been spectacular. Thank you very much. I think you've caused some quite thought-provoking conversations here today.
I've messed things up, right?
No. We'll find out. You can pay the site bill. If people want to learn more about this, or they want to reach out to you, do you offer any kind of consultancy or anything that can help organizations navigate some of this? Yeah,
we do some a mixture of, I don't know whether it's going to be more advisory or more consulting. So we can do measurement activity and diagnostic activity and consulting activity, or advisory just around the lines we've been talking about to help with the consulting or whatever it needs to be done. So orgmaster.com, orgmaster without the E, so orgmastr.com. Or patrick@orgmaster.com.
Fantastic. Patrick, absolute pleasure having you on.
No problem.
Thanks very much.
See you again.